We act like black men, by and large, are supposed to be progressive, when by and large, black men have been conservative.
That's right.
And it is appalling to me that we are allowing people to demonize black men in the name of them actually being their authentic selves. Why do y'all let progressive white people make you believe that their issue is your issue? Instead of telling black men fall in line, why aren't we saying, just pause for a second, take the time to understand who she really is and let her earn your vote?
Hey, family, welcome to the Jamal Bryant Podcast. Let's be clear, I can't tell you how excited I am. A couple of months ago, you had the opportunity to peer in on a conversation with my sister, Dr. Jamal Bryant. Today, you get to meet my brother. He's a brother from another mother, but he is my brother up and down. We got the same DNA, got the same blood, and two different mamas and two different daddies. This is my brother, Jeff Johnson.
What's up, man?
Jeff Bryant. I am glad. I am glad, super glad to have you.
Me too, man.
You came in today, and I thought about when I met you, we both had hair, and neither of us had glasses.
That is true.
Time has gone.
Still figuring it out.
Still figuring it out. Time has marched on. Both of us started in the youth department of the NAACP.
Man, that was 25 years ago.
25 years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
I just had a midlife crisis.
Maddie is 25.
Wow. Do you understand?
So it's actually longer than that. So
24.
It's 27 years. 27 years
yes.
that we known each other.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
So I was National Youth Director of the NAACP. This guy comes into my office with swag on 1,000,000 trillion and blew me away. I immediately brought him into the ranks and said, I got to have him because you got to eliminate your competition. I couldn't leave him out in the street and I don't know what he's doing. So I immediately brought him on and we became brothers through the course of time. We went through all of the cycles of life, of being married or being divorced, to co-parenting, and everything that happens in between.
And around, and yeah, man.
Yes, all of that. I don't even know where to start because we got 27 years to talk about.
Yeah. But it's so much going on right now.
Yeah.
That is almost like this convergence of who we've been.
Yeah.
So I think about I saw you before you saw me.
Right.
So I was at some NAACP event because I was an illegal advisor. Right. I was too young to be an advisor.
Yeah.
And I was like, who is this dude? Like I'd never seen anybody our age, and you only had 2 years on me.
Right.
Our age with the ability to speak to the people the way you did. I hadn't seen it before because cats was either trying to be Malcolm or trying to be Martin or trying to be somebody else.
Right.
And most people around the country didn't know Frank Reed, so they didn't know you were a Frank Reed clone.
Right.
So
right.
But it was just like, damn, like, wow. And so the moment we're in now, you never would have been able to tell us at that moment.
No.
That we would have had a black president.
Yes.
That we would have had a reality star who hung out with hip hop artists.
Right.
Become a president for the Republicans.
Right.
To then have a 50-year veteran bow out of the presidency and say a black woman should be the nominee.
Yeah.
In a place where black men's leadership is in a real complex place.
Yeah.
So there's all of this stuff happening right now.
We didn't have the benefit of a bar mitzvah. Jeff is an Alpha, I'm a Kappa, but we were on line together to become men.
at NAACP Fraternity Incorporated.
Yes. And I think about, Jeff, when I came through my original line, those who were on line with me was Harold Ford, Kendrick Meeks, Kwame Kilpatrick,
Jesse
Jr., Conrad Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
So my entire line has dismantled and it says something that a book, a dissertation, or a thesis has got to cover of what happened to that group.
Most of whom were legacy.
When you think about both of us coming from the nation's oldest, largest civil rights organization, when Reverend Jackson stepped down, Jeff, a year ago, he named as his successor a 62-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the politics of what happened after that is a whole nother story. But our generation got skipped in the process to say, we're not going to go down, we're going to go a half step. What do you think was in the water of the hip-hop generation that came through in leadership that didn't emerge?
Well, two things. So one, we are a institution deficient community.
Mm.
So if I think about the Jewish community, you name an issue, I can name 3 institutions designed, created, funded to serve it. We are institution deficient in a way that we can't even get super boutique because we just need Walmarts to be everything to everybody. When white folks, by and large, get to a certain age, somebody comes to them and says, Reverend Bryant, you have served us with distinction. We're now going to create the Reverend Bryant Institute for Faith and Justice.
Right.
We're going to give you a salary, pay your health insurance. You get to show up without worry.
Right.
There's been a myth that the baby boomer generation, primarily, post-King leadership, has blocked young people. By and large, they ain't had nowhere to go.
Wow.
But it wasn't nobody setting them up to King and Malcolm died broke.
Mm.
Most of these cats just been trying to figure out how to keep living and keep their ego intact and have a level of importance to the community. So Dorothy Height was still getting wheeled into meetings at 80-something.
Right.
And there should have been a Dorothy Height Institute for Women in Politics. There should have been a Jesse Jackson Center for presidential politics. There should have been an Abernathy Center for, prophetic faith justice work. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So none of these cats, there was no legacy fund. And our trauma kept saying, why are you hating on me as a young person? Why won't you get out of my way?
Yeah.
Their ego kept saying, I can't say I want to retire.
Wow.
Because I'm embarrassed. I don't have nowhere to go. I had a conversation with the minister, Minister Farrakhan, and I asked him once, I said, if there was one thing you could do different, what would it be? He said, Jeff, who's the leader of the Mormons? I said, I don't know. He said, they got $100 billion in investment and you don't know who's leading them. That's what I would have done different.
Wow. Marilee Evers said something to me, Marilee Evers Williams, widow of Medgar Evers, the 100th anniversary of NAACP. She said to me, Jamal, you don't understand why you all are having this backup. And Jeff, when she said this, I had to clutch my pearls. She said, the leaders ahead of you only motto was death.
Yeah.
Not retirement.
It was martyrdom.
It's martyrdom. So they don't know how to make that transition. I'm thinking about Sheila Jackson Lee just passed. Mm-hmm. Amazing voice out of Houston, Texas. An icon for the Congressional Black Caucus. And we're trying to see who's coming up next for somebody 81.
Right.
And I think that we've got to make sure
but there's
that we're
another
putting,
piece too,
yeah,
right? I remember meeting Jesse Senior for the first time, and I remember engaging Julian Bond. 2000, voter disenfranchisement. I'm down in Florida with Mr. Nfume, who at the time was the president and CEO of the NAACP. Reverend Jackson was there. We were backstage because, back then, our generation carried bags.
yeah.
So I was
Wasn't
carrying.
no security.
And what I mean was nobody expected me to be in that room speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I was there as Mr. Nfume's boy.
Yeah.
But I value that. Like, I never will be able to be thankful enough for the people who allowed me to be in rooms I didn't work to be in, with the flexibility to not be expected to give an answer, but to be able to sit there and listen.
Yeah.
And I got more wisdom from those rooms than I would have having to come in with all the answers.
Yeah.
But Mr. Nfume walked away, and I said something to Rev, and he looked at me, turned, and walked away. Didn't say nothing.
Wow.
Second time, I'm like, hey, Rev Jackson, Mr. Nfume, you remember Florida? He said, son, I don't know why you keep thinking I'm supposed to talk to you.
Is this true? Wow. You've never told me this story.
And walked away.
Wow.
I'm going to come back to that real quick, because you know how Julian Bond used to treat us.
Yes.
It's like, who in the hell is all these kids under the age of 30 who think they supposed to be on senior staff at the NAACP? It wasn't until I had done something with the head of Princeton Review, and we were challenged. Princeton Review Foundation and NAACP were working to remove the SAT as an entrance piece for college. We got a ton of press. The next time I saw him, he bumped into me. He was like, I see you. I didn't realize, Jay, these cats was risking their lives when they were in their 20s.
Mm-hmm.
We was trying to get press clippings.
Yeah.
And they were offended.
Yeah.
And so there was often this inability to connect, because social justice work became about celebrity and not necessarily about impact. And they never had the ability to be in these spaces and not have to worry about the FBI and not have to worry about death and not have to worry about them or their boys or their sisters becoming political prisoners. And so I just think that at least the baby boomers to Xers, there was never an accurate orientation process to what it means to be a leader in the movement.
Yeah.
And that's where that disconnect happened. And then the hip hop folks said, you know what? I don't even want to be part of this.
Yeah.
I don't want no more of this. So I'm going to start the hip hop caucus. I'm going to start the hip hop summit. I'm going to start the seeds of what will become Black Lives Matter. And it was the very trauma of the movement that blocked relationship and thus continuity.
Wow. No. And where do you see it showing itself up in this iteration while we now have a Black woman running for president?
I think we're constantly struggling between cultural significance and political economic impact. I'm beginning to see people make the same mistake we made with Obama. And that is, Negroes acted like we was electing a superhero.
Yeah.
Or a second coming of Jesus. There wasn't any real assessment of, this is a president who's going to have limitations, who does not have a ton of political history and is coming in relatively junior, which is why Biden was his running mate, because he was the senior statesman.
Right.
And as a result, we felt afraid to hold Obama accountable in certain areas because we were protecting the cultural moment versus helping Obama through us pushing him to do things that he wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
No.
So when I'm hearing people say to black men, get in line, like, don't critique her, don't say anything against her, just fall in line.
Right.
Fall in line only makes sense if you're a Democrat. If you're a Democrat, she's a Democratic nominee, fall in line.
Right.
If you haven't trusted a single political party, a single political figure, if you trusted legacy organizations or institutions, why are we telling men to get to fall in line instead of saying, wait a minute, give us an opportunity to introduce you to the real Kamala Harris, not the one you hear Trump talking about.
Right.
Kamala Harris 4 years ago didn't have a chance to say who she was, why she became a prosecutor, what it meant to her.
Right.
They didn't go, the Democrats didn't lay out her legacy of under her stead, 1,900 people were convicted on marijuana charges and only 45 served any time.
Right.
That she fought for. I don't want this to be no Kamala Harris commercial interview.
No.
But there wasn't an opportunity for her to tell her story. And as a result, all black folks in certain communities knew was she locked people up.
Yeah.
And from their perspective, that meant locking us up. And that was the story that was told.
Yeah.
So instead of telling black men fall in line, why are we saying just pause for a second, take the time to understand who she really is and let her earn your vote?
Yeah.
I have to believe Kamala wants to earn the votes of black men versus feeling like black men felt forced to vote for her.
No, that's great.
That's the challenge for me in this moment.
I came to Georgia 1 month after Stacey Abrams lost the first time to being governor. And all of the exit polls, Jeff, was she lost to Kemp, not because black men voted for Kemp, black men didn't vote. So our mutual mentor, Mr. Tommy Dortch, was rallying 100 black men and the Omegas and Alphas and the churches, but men wouldn't fall in line. Mm-hmm. So much of what we're seeing in social media space in terms of critique or objection is from black men.
But let's be straight up, though.
Yeah.
Like, let's really be straight up.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is not going to be popular with some even of my friends. There is nowhere within the realms of the progressive movement that I ever felt like there was a priority on the issues of black men. Mm. I feel like the progressive movement, I'll never forget working with People for the American Way. And they were attempting to rally black preachers in support of gay marriage. And I asked, why are we doing this? Like, there wasn't some epidemic of black preachers against gay marriage. Right. They weren't talking about it. Right. It wasn't as if there were a gang of people within the black church trying to say same gender-loving people saying marry me in the black church. I have one of my boys in Rwanda who always says to me, why do y'all let progressive white people make you believe that their issue is your issue?
Wow.
So there was this attempt, and I said, well, what are we doing for these black faith leaders? You are literally asking them to sacrifice reputation, consistency with dogmatic history. What are we doing for them? And they're like, what do you mean? This is where they should be. And I'm like, well, why? You literally are asking pillars of our community to risk reputation in the name of an issue that's not affecting where they are. And so I have long been troubled by how I have watched primarily white progressives manipulate black leadership in the name of being in line with a left and a far left that often has never had a level of intentionality around what black people needed.
That's powerful.
And black men have been the ones that been like, I ain't falling for it.
Yeah.
Black women, because they primarily have held roles of leadership and been focused on communal service and leadership, have been the one that have tried to navigate that. But we saw what they did to our sister, Tamika, in the women's movement, the women's march. Those were white progressive women that murdered her in the name of her standing with Farrakhan. When she had been with them,
right.
When she stood with people that questioned her credibility in our community.
Right.
So I feel like that's a moment we're in right now where we act like black men, by and large, are supposed to be progressive, when by and large, black men have been conservative.
That's right.
And it is appalling to me that we are allowing people to demonize black men in the name of them actually being their authentic selves, versus saying, brother, I see you.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about what I hear you saying.
Right.
But let's get together so we make sure we're clear about what the truth is.
In this election cycle, what do you think are the salient issues that resonate with men that would push them to the polls? If you sit not with me, but with Vice President Harris, you would tell her she needs to address what?
Generally speaking, economic access and power. I'm tired of us talking to black people through a lens of survival versus thriving.
Yeah.
So we're on the spectrum. There are black men who are trying to take care of families where they live in check to check.
Right.
There are black men that are saying, how do I take my small business into a medium-sized business? There are black men who are saying, how do I take my medium business and scale it so it can be global?
Right.
Let's stop pretending like there's not that spectrum, but it's money. The second piece is black men are concerned about security of their families and their communities. Whether you live in a zip code that is low income and you're trying to figure out how do we end violence, or whether you're in a community surrounded by people who don't see you and you're trying to figure out how do I raise my kids privileged and black.
Yeah.
But there is an issue of how do I ensure a level of safety for my family?
Yeah.
There's issues of what does the future look like by way of education, by way of access to resources? So I don't think it's confusing where black men are. Black men are just the least polled demographic of anybody in America.
Wow.
So we keep saying that the things that either black women who normally move more communally than black men do is in lockstep. It's not in lockstep, but it's not divided. And so I think we got to talk about how men have been conditioned to find themselves in places of leadership or responsibility, and how, while those things may be nuanced, they're not disconnected from black women.
No, that's great.
And that I'm struggling with, Jay, because I'm tired of watching people intentionally divide us from our sisters in the name of we don't show up for them, in the name of we want something else other than them, in the name of we not there for our children. While we got issues we got to deal with, there's myths within all of those.
I agree. What would you say? People are seeing you poised and polished and articulate. What would you say was the defining moment between the myth of Jeff Johnson and the reality?
I was really comfortable with this high-level socio-political conversation we was having.
Let's come on then.
Oh, man. My ability to serve, my ability to navigate multiple worlds. Like I'll never forget. You were the first person I called when I got on BT.
Wow.
I had just left and I'm like, Jay, they about to put me on Rap City.
Yeah.
And I don't think I realized how big it was until I got your response. Because for those listening, one of Jamal Bryant's greatest gifts is sarcastic uninterestedness. So you could be like, Jamal, man, I'm gonna be flying with the astronauts to Mars. And he'd be like, that's great, Jeff. Good for you, brother. So when you were excited,
oh no, I was
that
excited.
I was going to be on Rap City, that was. I mean, it contextualized something different for me, but I think about getting on Rap City, which gave me a public persona, riding that into all kinds of opportunities of impact for our folks, and relatively being a quote unquote good brother.
Yeah.
I think the biggest myth was that I thought that I was enough.
Mm.
And I never did.
Mm.
Never did. Some I think I realized, some came through therapy.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was until maybe 4 years ago that I realized I was constantly doing things to prove I was enough.
Wow.
Than operating in the truth of my enoughness.
Yeah.
So, and it was life crises happening all around me that made me realize, yo, there's no way you can do all of these things and love any of them.
Mm.
Because you literally are sacrificing things that matter for things that matter unnecessarily.
Yeah.
And so I think I was just in a place, Jay, where it was like, wow. Everything for me was about what I did, not who I was.
Oof.
So I got to get this next show.
Yeah.
Or I got to get this next job.
Yeah.
Or I got to get this next opportunity. Or I
Yeah.
got to make this next thing happen. And so I realized that most of my leadership was about extraordinary vision connected with comprehensive impotence.
Mm.
Because you can't fully manifest what God has put you here to do when you don't actually believe you deserve it.
Wow. Wow.
Because at some point, at all of these points, I end up operating in, I end up operating in confident fear.
Mm-hmm.
And when you operate in fear, you never accomplish the fullness of what you've been called to do. We hear often, God has not given us a spirit of fear.
Yes.
As I'm shaking in my boots,
Right.
unwilling to take steps of faith.
Yeah.
To do what God has already told me.
Yeah.
I was put here for, but I don't believe. I know, Jay, there are times where I intellectually believed it, but molecularly did not. The very being of my spirit and my body was like, yeah, we hear you up there saying that, but nah, because you know, and this was it. I think this was it. You know everything you have failed at.
Yeah.
And I think, I remember I asked you once, you ever thought about how hard it is to grow in public? And I think one of the challenges of my life was public too early.
Wow.
For my maturity level.
That's for all of us.
And so I'm talking about from being Black Student Union president at the University of Toledo to being the Jay, I'm the only person of color ever to be present student government at the University of Toledo. Like, from that moment for me, life was public.
Right.
And so when life is public, you have choices in, do I lean into my character flaws
Yeah.
to develop higher levels of character, or do I hide those things and over accentuate the things that I do well? And I did the latter in the name of years of arrested development
Right.
in certain both emotional and psychological areas.
I remember we sat in my car almost 3 hours after Giselle filed for divorce. And I'm going over with you. What I'm going to say to Bishop? What's Reverend C going to say? What do I tell the church on Sunday? What if the Baltimore Sun comes? And you said at the end of all of that, how are you? And I was so fixed on damage control and publicity that I hadn't taken a moment to do an autopsy on humanity. I'm like, okay, I'm playing violins and moving chairs on the Titanic, and I don't even realize I'm on the raft. It's going down. Let it go down. But where are you in that process? Two things for that. One, I read somewhere, and I'm not sure if I read it or this is from Dr. Tamer. Your real friends are who you are and who you call in crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, for me, Jeff, our Burning Sands moment.
Do you remember what else I said to you before I got out the car?
Tell me.
The worst thing you've ever done is never bigger than the call on your life.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Because I felt like you was about to run for the hills.
Oh, I was on my way to Zimbabwe, brother.
Right. And I was just like, yo, I get it.
Yet.
I get it. Because I remember when Malcolm was born.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, this baby being born is like a manifestation of every character flaw I have.
Yes.
And I think back like, yo, you was dumb. But it wasn't that. It was, man, I think part of it was, I'm so glad I had you in that time. I had some, because the other thing, man, is I was, for the better part of my life, an expert at managing crisis by myself, which is horrifying.
Yes.
Because the worst thing you could do is be in your own head by yourself during times of crisis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then you just make more mistakes. I was about to take a youth pastor job in Vallejo.
No, listen. We were at Southern University in Baton Rouge. Both of us were speaking. I don't even know how this happened. Both of us are speaking. And you were up before me. It was one of them black male summits. And you up talking to the students. Hey, I was unfaithful to my wife. I got a kick. I'm sitting there like, Jeff, no. Go back. Abort. This ain't it. The students are there with their jaws to the ground.
No, that was CBC.
Is that what that was?
That was a CBC pack. Because you called me.
Listen.
Afterwards, it was like, are you okay? Are you under duress? What has happened? Why are you telling all these people this stuff? It's not out yet.
Right. Right. Not meet the press, beat the press. No, but that was a critical moment of, you always hear, embrace your own ish before somebody else can tell your story. Mm-hmm. I've read it. I had never seen it until you. I'm telling you. And it was horrifying and inspiring. It was. It was like, wow, you can really do it, but I ain't doing that. And to be able to embrace flawed manhood with excellence. Because we often see flaw as weakness. But to own it and not lease it, wasn't the devil made me to do it. The secretary came in. I'm just getting out of jail. It was willful disobedience. And we had to go through the cycles of manhood, let me say, with examples of good manhood. We couldn't fall completely back on, we had no clue, no idea, but made that decision.
But the struggle is often too, I've learned as I've gotten older how to share my own transparency without indicting others. But often we were in an ecosystem that encouraged you to feel comfortable with being hypocritical. Like, it's major dudes around.
Yeah.
That's like, nah, man, you ain't got to be good.
Yes.
Just show good.
Right.
Like, let me show you this game, right? This game is get up, give a dope speech,
and go on.
Serve the people, and then just don't keep her at the same hotel everybody else at.
Right.
Like, and I'm watching this as a 20-something-year-old, and I'm confused because I want to be a good dude.
Yes.
But I'm like, well, this the way you supposed to do it.
Yes.
And there's tension in this for me as a 20-something-year-old coming up, because like the veil of this myth, the veil of the myth of perfection was lifted.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge for me. And I realized how much of my life I have failed at my own humanity, trying to be perfect for other people.
Yeah.
Or not fail other people. And then in denying myself the things that I need inherently, I didn't know how to say what I needed. So I was frustrated. And then when I didn't get what I needed, because nobody around me knew what I needed, because I never said it, then I created a pattern of hustling my needs.
Yeah.
At the cost of the people that needed me the most. And it wasn't out of an attempt to be some shady dude. It was out of a immaturity and inability to understand that what I needed mattered while I was serving the people who I loved most. And that lying was never justifiable tool of getting what I needed, even if it was in private.
Yeah.
And I think the struggle for me too, as I think about that trajectory, was I felt guilty a lot of times for having a father that was there.
Wow.
Like, because we surrounded by so many cats who didn't.
Right.
And I never processed the difference or the nuance between presence and capacity. I ain't never had to look for my dad.
Yeah.
My dad showed up times I was like, I wish this Negro would go somewhere. Like, why is he showing up in my classroom?
Don't pop up.
What is this dude doing?
Right.
But I never thought to myself, what does my dad not have the capacity to teach me? And so even as I'm going out in the world and there's righteous men who want to mentor me, I'm like, I don't need you.
Right.
I got a father.
Right.
Denying myself what I actually needed. And then out of some machismo and desire for growth and advancement, I'm targeting mentors who don't want to mentor me.
Yeah.
And don't have the capacity to give me character.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I'm hurt.
Yeah.
From a dude who doesn't have character rejecting me.
Yes.
But who got cachet. And I'm rejecting a cat who's got character but doesn't have cachet.
Yeah.
And so navigating that when you talk about this identity of what manhood really is, the pathway and the journey of it, and recognizing that there should never be a moment where I don't have a plethora of men who have character in given areas, teaching me how to elevate my character in those areas.
What we found out, Jeff, collectively, is the distinct difference between being gifted and being anointed. So the guys who we were looking up to were gifted, but didn't have the same contract with God we had. So the stuff that they could get away with, we couldn't get away with it. Every time he gonna pull that cover off.
Every single.
Right. We don't have the gift of getting away. We one block away from the bank. We think we done made it. And here comes that siren has been tripped off with a silent alarm. With all that has taken place, tell me how it's impacted your relationship with God.
Woo. My relationship with God has never been the issue for me. I had a really amazing pastor in my home church as a kid, Reverend James Thomas. I grew up in a Black Presbyterian church in Cleveland. And I'll never forget being 8 years old at Vacation Bible School when I run up to him. And I'm like, Reverend Thomas, this don't make sense. He's like, what? I said, how did Adam and Eve populate the whole world? Like, you telling me
Right.
two people,
right.
you saying their kids were sleeping with each other? Like,
Right.
what was going on? Like, I'm literally, like,
Right.
logically, what is this? And he said to me, Jeff, you are not at a place of maturity to process the full text by yourself. He said, I want you to learn lessons and build relationship with God by yourself instead of with other people. He said, your relationship with God is what you need by yourself. He said, walking it out is what you need other people helping you do.
I like it.
And I'm 8.
Yeah.
And so that coupled with being in a Presbyterian church, that wasn't a holiness church,
Right.
that wasn't a Pentecostal church,
Right.
where there wasn't a whole lot of dogmatic judgment.
Right.
So you could be a person without threat of aggressive church judgment.
Right.
My personal, I don't even view them as failures anymore. My personal challenges, bad decisions that I've made, whether from a place of trauma or from a place of immaturity or from a place of selfishness, wherever they were, have taught me and given me a challenge with dogma, and thus challenge with my relationship with the church, not with God. And so my biggest challenge has been when Madison was conceived, Dania and I, my first wife, weren't married. I had to get in front of the church and apologize.
Ooh-wee. At a Presbyterian church?
No. That's what I'm saying. And listen, there are parts of me that even now understand it, even though I have a level of disdain for it. I found out Madison was coming the week before I'm giving a trial sermon.
Mm.
So there's these dynamics, right? I'm 25 years old, just, really coming out of college, on this pathway of discovery on my call to ministry. And my girlfriend and I at that time, she gets pregnant. And instead of, there are all kind of things that I think could have happened, looking back, like, we gonna postpone your trial sermon.
Right.
There's some learning you need to do. There's some growth you need to have. No, I had to get in front of the church and say, I'm sorry. The bullet to my heart that caused. Thankfully, she didn't have to do that.
Right.
Right. That would have been a whole nother thing, because often it's the woman that gets shamed.
Right. Was she at the same church?
Yeah.
Wow.
I felt like for me, it was a level of accountability I was navigating, but it was accountability through shame, not accountability through love and growth.
Yeah.
And I have experienced that within the church on multiple levels in ways that the church was often not the place I felt safe.
Mm-hmm.
So as a youth pastor, that you start talking about relationship.
Right.
I felt God clearly saying to me, make these babies feel safe. And so when I'm your youth pastor at Empowerment Temple, the conversation I'm having with some of my babies there, horrified parents.
Right.
Like, I'm having a conversation with a baby about why she's having anal sex versus vaginal sex because she feels like it's safer because another girl who got 2 babies at 15 told her that. Right.
Yeah.
And she feels safe enough to have that conversation with me. And on the back end of having a conversation with a parent, the parent is angry with me for not talking to this child about abstinence. I'm like, Ma, we passed that like several stages ago.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, how do I save your baby's life so that there's a bridge to dealing with her soul?
Yeah.
And I often think that the struggle that I've had, my personal struggle with the body, is that I have often been interacting more with church people than people of God.
No, that's great.
And that has been my struggle in not letting that affect my relationship with God, in the name of feeling like God's people made me feel unsafe.
Yes.
I don't know if that made no sense.
It makes all the sense, because you are not a churchman. You are a man of God. Y'all, listen, I'm going to need a nap after this. I am so grateful that you're here. We need a whole nother hour. We going to have to do a part 2 to come back and download and detox. I want you to share this with every man you know. I need you to sit this down with every parent, and every individual who's going through this journey through life needs to be a part of this conversation. Thank you for hanging out with me. The Jamal Bryant Podcast. Let's be clear. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.